Struggling to move your nonprofit forward? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Nonprofit Architect, where we are giving you the actionable steps you need to launch and grow your nonprofit organization. Now, here's your host, Travis Johnson.
Hello and welcome to the Nonprofit Architect Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Johnson, here today with my guest, Chris Staron. Grab that link in the show notes, click on patreon.com/nonprofitarchitect. Throw us a couple bucks a month, help us stay on the air, help support the Nonprofit Architect and our vision for helping you build stronger nonprofit. Chris is the visionary that uses improv comedy training for corporations, organizations, and families. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing real well. Yourself?
You know what? I'm doing mighty fine. Glad to connect with you across oceans and time zones. I think you're all the way in Wyoming. We had talked a few weeks back when we had a kind of an intro call, and we're trying to figure out how to really connect the things that you're passionate about to my audience of that, kind of idea, the first 5 years worth of nonprofit operation. And we landed on this improv comedy scene that you talked about. I got really excited. Chris, tell us what the improv comedy training is and how that all works. Tell me about that.
Right. And as we talk today, you'll see that improv comedy really applies to so many different aspects of life. It's being open to life itself, being able to say yes when opportunities come to you, being able to be silly with your friends, being able to enjoy life much more. It really helps in a lot of different aspects. And so what we're going to be talking about today, and hopefully giving you some tips for your nonprofit organization, we're going to be talking about how to be open to new ideas. We're going to give you some games that you can play with your coworkers to try to open up those creative juices, get those things flowing, and maybe, dare I say, is it possible, have a little fun at work. So we're hoping that together we can teach you some great tools to be able to do that.
It is just mind-blowing to me. I talk to so many different organizations and people in the nonprofit world and people in the business world, as a matter of fact. And it's interesting to see what does and doesn't work and what strategies people talk about. How do you get your team motivated and engaged? And after our discussion, I looked a little bit into the improv comedy training kind of realm, just a little, toe in the water. And it's really this whole other angle, this whole other area, this whole other perspective and way to not hit the problem in the face, but to really, it's just so different than the mold. Not bad, just different.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense that it would kind of open up doors to things that you didn't know were really blocking you.
Yeah. Improv is great for a log jam. If you have just hit a log jam and you're not sure how you can get through that problem, improv allows you to be able to think about things in different ways and hopefully be okay with just, spitballing ideas that might sound a little crazy at first, that maybe you'd be nervous about sharing out loud. And hopefully you can get through that log jam with some of these tools we're going to give you today.
That is really cool. Of course, if you're a regular listener, you know that I'm stationed in the Middle East in the military active duty Navy. And so as you might imagine, working hours or some of the working friends, military folk, there's not a lot of playtime at work. No. Especially this is kind of a staff headquarters. There's a 3-star admiral if you are not in the military. What that means is the CEO of a major corporation essentially is walking around your building day to day. So that kind of professionalism, that expected decor and military tradition, all those things apply. So how do you engage the corporate world? How do you approach them with this comedy training idea, this improv idea?
Right. Well, it might be hard. A lot of the time it takes action from the top to be okay with things. But even just around the office with your coworkers, with the people you're working with in the field, if you can try to have to build in some of these tools, if you can have some fun together, if you can open up the conversation so it's not so rigid where you're afraid of failure, you'd be amazed at how you can affect change even from the bottom up. It's easier from the top down, but even from the bottom up, you'd be amazed at what you can do to get things going. Like, I was going to ask you, have you ever worked somewhere, Travis, where everybody was grumpy?
Yes.
Is it easy when you've got a great idea in a grumpy environment? Is it easy? Do you feel welcome to spit out new ideas, to try new things, to better the process?
It really depends on how off the wall or outside the box that is. It in that environment, that grumpy kind of environment that I think you're describing, might be that type of meeting that you're just in receive only mode, right? Because it really just kind of has to be that way. And you might have an offline kind of idea discussion, and you would find the appropriate level to try to see if there's room to insert that idea.
Right.
Like my biggest kind of adversary in this region is Iran. And don't quote me on the distance, but they're like 150 miles from us, maybe 200 miles from us. That's not far. Mm-hmm. So they're right here. It's the edge. And if you watch the news earlier this year, there were some tensions between the two of us for obvious reasons if you watch the news. Yeah. And that doesn't allow for anything other than really go time and action time. Right. And there's definitely time for that. It's not sustainable because we're humans and we need to, recharge on a regular basis. Some of us even try to sleep, I guess, a third of the day. I hear that's a thing.
What?
8 hours? Yeah, I'm not sure. But like in that grouchy environment, at a heightened tension, like especially in the military, you might not be able to break that ice. Right. But in the corporate or the nonprofit world, I can see how a couple of failures or a couple of stumbles or a couple of whatevers get someone into that kind of grouchy mode. But how would you break or attack that in like the nonprofit setting?
Well, I think one thing, if you were sort of like, if the grouchy person is your superior, be persistent and try to keep getting your ideas out there. Don't give up. Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things. Don't give up. And then kill them with kindness is one of my favorite sayings. Continue to be kind, continue to do your job well. And that gives you a platform to be able to speak into somebody's life. Now, if you just fire back grumpy all the time, you've closed that door. You've shut down that relationship. But if you can be positive and kill them with kindness, you'd be amazed in where that would go. I had one job that I had. We had a mechanic, a professional mechanic, big guy, intimidating big guy. And I had to go to him multiple times with issues with the vehicles we were driving and say, like, listen, the tires are falling off this thing. You need to take care of it. And I was straight up afraid of this guy. Just straight up afraid of his presence. He was always grouchy and things. But the important thing was like, listen, if I don't say something about what's going on, this vehicle is going to blow up with me in it. I need to be persistent. I need to be kind, but I need to be persistent and do my job well. And I think that breaks down barriers. And we did eventually form a nice relationship because he respected me that I was doing my job and keeping after him. But one of the things, hopefully, we can do, one of my encouragements, especially if you're a supervisor, is allow for some silliness in your workplace. Because if you can be silly, silliness builds friendships. It builds relationships. And if you can, nobody wants to work in a workplace that is just drab and boring all the time. So you have to allow yourself to have some silliness built in. And if you don't know how you can do that, you can play some of the games that we're going to play today and try to build in some of those things because silliness breeds creativity. And those relationships that you build through there are going to make life so much better. It's going to be so much more fun to work in that place, and those guys are going to be able to feel that camaraderie that if they got a crazy idea that just might be crazy enough to work, they might be open to actually telling somebody instead of keeping it to themselves. One of the important things I think is important. I'm big on bringing ideas and being open to bringing ideas because sometimes we get this beautiful little thing, but we keep it to ourselves. One of the things in improv that's so important is they call it bringing a brick. And basically you can imagine we're about to build a house as a team. You have to bring something to the table.
What do you mean by bring a brick?
bring a brick, bring an idea, bring something to contribute.
To build with.
To build with. Yeah. So you've probably been in that meeting where your boss is like, we've got this problem. I'm freaking out. What are your ideas? And it's like, well, you've been freaking out about this for a couple of days. You didn't think of a single idea that whole time. Even if it's a bad idea, bring something, bring a structure, bring a goal, bring a tool that will get us to the solution. Don't just come panicking. That doesn't do anybody any good. So in improv, oftentimes it's a two-person scene and you're trying to tell a story. And so what often, like the brick you're bringing is that suggestion the audience is giving you. And then you have to build off of that suggestion to something. But the suggestions could mean a multitude of different things to different people. So like name a piece of fruit.
Pomegranate.
Okay. And we might take pomegranates very differently, you and I. You might think the scene is about us sharing a pomegranate. It could be that you are hoarding it to yourself. It could be you're drinking a drink that has pomegranate in it. You are going to come up with an idea of what pomegranate means to you in the scene. And then, of course, I'm coming up with something completely different. And that's great. So we're already starting with a bunch of different ideas, which is a great way to start a meeting. If you bring something to the meeting, it helps a lot. Again, even if it's just a tool, it's a game. It's like, this is where I'd like to end up. A goal can be very important. Bring something to the meeting so that if like the audience in an improv scene shouts out pomegranate and you're like, Chris has got it. You're leaving me high and dry and all the responsibility is on me. What kind of scene partner are you? I want you to come up with stuff. So again, you named a piece of fruit, name an item of clothing.
T-shirt. And you can buy ours at our link in the show notes.
I'm going to plug in. Okay, I'm going to plug my podcast. It's Truce, Truce. We each get a plug. Every time you plug, I plug. Name a relationship. Like a doctor-patient or a mother-daughter.
I think we'll go spouse, husband-wife.
Husband-wife. Okay, so we're bringing things together. Name a board game.
Catan.
Okay, yeah.
Love it. Love Catan. You get a new board every time, and I can dominate you in so many different ways. I love it.
I bet.
My friends are playing it right now in like the next building.
Oh, that's killing me.
But I had an appointment, and I think you're important too.
Well, I think you're important as well. So here's the thing: we've brought something, and in our meetings, in our discussions, it's important to bring something, even if it's not great. But trust yourself to come up with something, and trust your group, trust your coworkers to be able to take that idea and work with it. Now, just as important as bringing something is being able to drop your thing. So if we're in a scene, because you're.
I'm in the military.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of firstborn A-types. It is tough for a lot of people in the military,
right?
Men and women alike, to let go of their thing.
Right.
I think we're getting kind of to a phase where it's more and more, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more understood. Good. It's more scientific. I know a thing, but I might not know all the things, and this thing might be beneficial or not, or I'm not sure how my thing fits in. Oh, it's crap. Okay, you just let me know.
Right.
But there's definitely been some times where I will not let my thing go. I am dying on this hill for this thing.
Right. And sometimes we're really bad at that. And that kills an environment, kills a work environment. Mm-hmm. In an improv comedy scene, again, we're up there usually two of us. And I have to be able to trust you to bring something. But then if I say we're in outer space together and you say, no, we're on a fire truck. You just shot down my idea. And that scene hasn't progressed at all, So now we have to play it like what? I'm crazy and I think I'm in outer space, but we're in a fire truck. Or maybe, it doesn't move the scene forward. It just totally destroys where we've been going. And the same can be true in a meeting. If somebody comes up with an idea and it's maybe better than your idea, you have to be able to drop your thing. Or maybe their idea is more time sensitive than your idea.
So what might this look like in a nonprofit?
I'm a big fan in meetings of dry erase boards. I know they're a little cliche, but if you could just like make lists of things and just have a session where you just rap and go for things. But of course,
brain dump it on the board, throw it up there, and you might cross it off later, but you've got it on the board captured.
Right. And hold your critiques of other people's ideas until you're done. Like just brain dump it first. But I'll tell you that this takes a lot of planning because you have to be able to give people enough time. If you're in a meeting and you're like, okay, the client's coming in half an hour and we need an idea right now, it's very different than, hey, listen, the client's coming in 2 weeks. We've got time. Let's think about this, plan in advance so you have time worked out to be able to come up with ideas. And one of the beauties of improv is like, you've got all the time in the world. You've got this 2-hour show or whatever to work out these ideas. It doesn't have to be solved right now. You can let it breathe. You have to give people the space where they can be creative and the time where they can be creative. If you're always in a rush, you got to go with the first idea. But if you have time, you can brain dump on that dry erase board and make those ideas work for you,
Absolutely. So nonprofit listeners out there, we talked about a client showing up in 30 minutes and client showing up in 2 weeks. We talked about next end of year gala or event.
Yeah.
You could and should have a framed out, this is what crisis or short-term pseudo planning cycle looks like.
Yeah.
What are the key 1, 2, or 3 things we got to hit and have an answer for in a super time compressed thing? You need to have a time planning cycle for a weekish, 2 weekish, monthish. Like, hey, what does this look like meeting wise, planning wise? What pieces do we need, where, and why? And this is going to take some time to put together, as where a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual event, you've got time is your friend unless you forget about it and it's your enemy, but you have a different planning cycle and a different rhythm to hit those events and make those things happen. Just if you're listening, that's kind of a little thing I wanted to talk about.
Right.
Now it's out there.
You have way more freedom if you plan in advance. You can't be as creative if you don't plan in advance because you're limited on resources. Now, the other thing is if you've got an idea and I've got an idea, is we can meet together in the middle. We can find a place between those two things that works really well. And there's a game we can play to work this out. I'm going to rope you into this again.
Are we using a pomegranate T-shirt and husband-wife relationship? Because I wrote them down if I have to use them. I don't have my improv chops. I'd be interested in getting a little class. I think it's a cool concept, but I'm taking notes because I want to be in this.
Okay. Now, I want you to come up with a random word that we haven't said before, and I'm going to say a random word at the same time. Okay? So we're just a count of 3. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then you say your random word. I'm going to say my random word.
Is it the on 3, or is it a 3 then say?
1, 2, 3, boom. There it is.
1, 2, 3, and then boom. Okay, so 1 second for the random word. I'm trying to remember my word from the year, but that was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then I had a new word I came up with this week. So, okay.
Okay.
I'm ready. I got my word when you are.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, book.
Finish
book. Okay. And I think the time delay is going to work against us on this. But so what we need to do together is try to find a word between those two. Finish and book. Okay. Don't say what it is.
A word between?
Yeah. So you and I are going to continue this. We're going to take those words. No. We're going to try to find, we're each going to say one more word again at the count of 3. And knowing finish and knowing book, you think of a word that somehow combines those two. I'm going to think of a word that somehow combines two. And we're going to keep doing this until we arrive at the same word. Finish and book. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll tell us what this exercise means, but I like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right.
1, 2, 3, goal. Publish, goal. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to try to do that again until we get in between the two.
So we're between publish and goal.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have a word between those two.
What? Just anticipate what you think I'm going to say. Publish and goal. No?
I don't know. I don't know.
Be open.
Look, my audience is judging me right now. I'm not good at improv.
This is improv. It's supposed to be a no judgment goal, no judgment space. There's not going to be a wrong answer here.
I feel like there's an angry face, like on a T-shirt. This is supposed to be a no judgment zone.
No, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, and this is stuff you can play together. It's silly and it's good to laugh together, and it's fine. So just be open to it.
So between publish
and
goal. Okay.
Yeah. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Deadline.
Author.
Publish and goal, deadline, and author. Okay.
Mine wasn't between, but I couldn't think of anything.
No? That's okay. Well, the whole point of this exercise is eventually we should end up on the same word. I don't want to bore your audience getting us there.
Well, I think this might be important because if they can't see how the exercise plays out, now if we go like 3 more rounds and we don't get nothing, I'll be about me to call it. But if they don't have the example in front of them, how can they take the example and run with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's
okay. Yeah. Author and deadline.
Deadline. Yeah. Author and deadline. Okay.
Okay. All right.
1, 2, 3. Write.
Date.
Write date. Okay. We'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. Schedule.
I didn't say a word. Schedule. How did you know?
Schedule. How did you know? The important thing is that, see, we're laughing. This builds relationship. It opens up ideas. But it also, is to illustrate that point. Sometimes in a meeting, you're going to have an idea that's pretty good. And somebody else is going to have an idea that's also pretty good. And there might be a place in between those two that will work for both of you. So sometimes, you need to bring a brick. You need to drop your brick if the other person's idea is better. But sometimes also you can meet in the middle and find something that's going to work. You're going to find a way to gel those two things.
I like that. And I think it's important to note that the person who's setting down their brick for the better idea, it might just not be the right time.
It's true.
For that idea. Yeah. There was 10 or 15 years ago, there was this super forward-thinking, forward-leaning group. I can't remember the name, can't remember the company. I'm sorry. If you know it, throw it in the comments somewhere. Great. But they started a grocery delivery service.
Nice.
Which is a great idea, but the market they weren't thinking about that as a thing and a need yet. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward to today, you have basically online or curbside pickup at Walmart or grocery stores. We can go in, right, and you can say, I want to grocery shop these things, and you just pull up, they throw it right in the back, and you're off. It's already paid for online. And then there's one step further with like Uber Eats, or over in this country we have Talabat, where they'll give you hot food delivery, or they'll grab groceries for you and bring it to you for like a couple of bucks, which is fantastic. And it's working now. You got Postmates in the U.S., some other stuff. But 15 years ago, the market just wasn't ready for the idea.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So sitting down your brick might not be just because it's a worse idea. It might just not be the right time for your market, your donor, your whatever, the group that you're with. It might just be too advanced for right now.
Right. And that takes humility. It takes humility to be able to table an idea. But, I also am a big fan. I've got this big notebook here of ideas. And I'm a big fan of keeping notebooks full of ideas for that reason.
Whatever do you mean?
Look at that thing. Look at all that scratch. And, another really good tool with that humility, with that being able to mix our two ideas together is this, there's like one phrase you hear in improv all the time, and that is yes and.
So we were talking about that, and that I love that.
Yeah. It's this idea that so you're going to say, hey, we're in outer space. I'm going to then take that idea that we're in outer space on the stage, and I'm going to take it one step further and be like, yes, and I've loved our time here on the moon.
And it helps both. I think it helps both kind of partners get on closer to the same page. You get closer to that one word. So when you go to, I don't know, or I don't have the training, but I'm trying to understand this. And anyway, I just try to understand this. Now you're both closer to the right idea, and you're closer to being on the same page where you can work together.
Right. And it helps to be like, okay, I love your idea. We're in outer space. Let's take that and let's continue to build on it. And that's how great projects are made, how great products are made, how great organizations are made, is if we start with a great idea and everybody builds on it together and everybody's on the same page and can then add to it. Yes, and that's the way it is. Like in improv comedy, again, if somebody says, you say we're in outer space, and I say no, we're in a burning building, we've gotten nowhere, and the audience is confused. We're confused. But if I say yes, and I'm taking your idea and I'm building on it, I'm contributing to it, and you'll see that scenes are way more interesting if we're not arguing, but we're on the same page as to where it's going. In improv comedy, a beginner if they're arguing on stage. If they're working together, they're actually going somewhere together and they're moving forward. So I have another game we can play.
Tips to be an improv snob. If you see them arguing on stage, just know that they're a noob, and then chastise them later.
Right, please.
Or give them encouraging words later.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have another game we can play to build on this.
Yes, and. Can we give them the context and the idea behind the game before we go into the game?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea for this game is to encourage you and your teammates to be able to listen to each other, to be able to take those things we've already talked about, being able to take the idea that came just before you, drop your thing if it doesn't apply, and then build on what they've said. That's the goal.
With the goal of getting to some kind of consensus for the
get to a consensus to move the story forward. Yeah.
I like
it. And this is fun. Again, a lot of these games, you can illustrate these points, but it also can be fun to just break the ice in a meeting, in a group, especially if you're getting to know each other for the first time. These can be very valuable tools. You can just play these games and have a good time. So this is a game called Yes and, for obvious reasons.
I like the title. It's straightforward.
Yeah, and so we're just going to try to tell a basic story, you and I, one line at a time, and each line has to start with yes and da 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 da. And so we're just going to try to build on a story. So what would be like a fairy tale, like a really popular fairy tale?
Well, you always got the hero's journey, right? They use that in Harry Potter. They use it in Lord of the Rings. They use, what? Let's do the Harry Potter. What do you think?
Harry Potter. Okay, how does Harry Potter end for the audience who may not know?
I don't want to, spoiler alert, just for my fans out there. Spoiler alert.
It's several years old. I think we're okay.
Harry Potter, through many different books / movies, he has killed Voldemort in many forms, but finally kills Voldemort.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert over.
Okay. So let's in our story here, one line at a time, we're going to tell you what happened after the books ended, right? So this is after Happily Ever After. That's our goal. What happened after Harry Potter ended? So we can start the story. Would you like to start? Can you give us the first line of this story?
Yes, and I can give you the first line of the story. So Harry Potter is there standing over his vanquished foe Voldemort as his body steams and the life drains out of him.
So I'm going to start my sentence, yes, and continue on what you said. Yes, and he realized he was very tired and needed a nap.
Yes, and because he's a wizard, he was able to conjure a bed right next to him immediately.
Yes, and he had the best night of sleep he'd ever had.
Yes, and his friends were kind of upset about him because who vanquishes a great foe, conjures a bed, and immediately takes a nap while everyone is still standing around them.
Yes, and Harry Potter told them about his license deal with Serta Mattresses and that he was contractually obligated to sleep on a bed when he vanquished his enemy.
Yes, and I'm kind of surprised that he settled on Serta when he had much more lucrative offers from Purple Mattress and Craft.
Are they sponsors of your show?
No, they're not. They're not.
Okay. Yes, and he signed the mattress and put it up on eBay.
Yes, and surprisingly, or not surprisingly to our friends in the nonprofit world, that mattress sold for $10 million and was able to fund all of your nonprofit ideas.
See, great. Yeah, you were able to tie it back around to your podcast. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug Truce Podcast again. That's TRUC podcast, because I get to do it every time you do yours. But you see, we were able to take a very basic idea, a story that we all know, and build on it together, working together, yes-anding. And there wasn't a point where you said, no, he didn't fall asleep. He went grocery shopping or whatever. That would have derailed the whole forward momentum of that thing. Especially when you are storyboarding or doing that brain dump you were talking about. You don't want to start knocking down ideas right away. It's better to be like, oh, let's take that idea and see where we can go with it. Let's build on that idea, because it's so much easier to just knock somebody down. But what happens when you knock somebody down? You make them quiet. They don't want to speak again. What else? What are you going to say? What happens when you knock them down?
You take away their willingness to want to contribute, and that's almost exactly what you said. And why would I contribute if I'm just going to get shot down, and not only shot down, but berated and possibly demoralized just because I had an idea? Some of my ideas, let's be honest, they're going to be garbage, or they're going to not apply, or they're going to be for later, or they might be a seed of a good idea, or it might be a perspective change, or it might be a fantastic idea. But all of those are in the range of each person and what they have to contribute. And when you do something like a brain dump and you throw all these on the board, there's going to be a chunk that are yeses and how can we move forward? There's going to be a chunk that are just like, come on, guys, were you drinking before work? Some of those are going to be for future development. Some of them are going to be tabled for a longer time frame, and some of them are going to spark different departments and different ideas and different thoughts and totally different realms of thinking. Yeah, that only works if you allow them to get on the board, right? And then you don't make people feel like trash during the process.
Right. And that's important, especially for your quieter team members, the shy people, the introverts. They might have the best ideas in the room, but if you're always shooting them down, they might retract into themselves. There was Gary Marshall, who directed Pretty Woman and created Mork and Mindy and all these other great TV shows. Also used to write for Your Show of Shows, which was an old black and white show way before us. But another writer on that was Neil Simon. And Neil Simon, wrote The Odd Couple and all these really great plays that kind of like shaped Broadway in the 1900s. But Neil Simon was super quiet. And they often in a writer's room, they would drown him out. But Gary would make room for Neil and say, like, Neil, what do you think about this? And inevitably, it brought the room down. Like everybody just died laughing because they let Neil Simon talk, and there might be somebody in your workplace who might be like that, who has the best ideas, but, is just shy. And if you shoot people down instead of saying yes and, or allowing that space for them to create, you could be losing some amazing ideas. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the shyness might be one component. Another component might be they're new to the organization.
Right.
Or, for my military friends, they might have a lower rank than you.
Yes.
But realize the people that are new to the organization or have a lower rank, you don't know their whole backstory. Mm-hmm. Right. You might have a guy that comes in that has a degree in X, and you know that because they filled out the application to the interview or whatever. And something comes up for some kind of, expansion of a building, your office space, your whatever the thing is. What you don't know, what his degree didn't tell you, is that his dad's a contractor and he grew up bidding contracts, actually doing the carpentry work, actually doing the drywall, actually doing the electrical, and the whole scene behind the scene. And you tell him to shut up because he's the new guy. He might have just given you the most world-class knockdown, drag out, save you money, ideas, run through, build up, all the details involved with the construction and building. And you had him right here for free. You're already paying him $8 an hour, whatever the thing is.
Right.
But because he was the new guy, you didn't let him talk. And all you did was make yourself, A, look stupid, B, say you're not a boss when you listen to ideas, and C, cost you actual dollars and time because the answer was in the room, but you let your personal whatever bravado get in the way of listening to the expert you already had on staff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You got to be open to that stuff. And I used to make independent films, and in our film, Bringing Out Bobby, it's a comedy. And sometimes our crew guys would have, like, they would just be whispering to each other. And I'd be like, what are you whispering about? And they would have the best joke to add into a scene. And we did it over and over and over again. And it made the movie so much better because we were able to listen to those people who were whispering, who, were a little shy about talking.
You plug your show, I plug. You plug your stuff, I plug my stuff. Check out my side blog, Warriors Wallet, to really dissect what you're doing in your financial world. I helped 400 families pay off $6 million in debt over the last 15 years.
Nice, man. Good plug. That's a solid plug. Another thing I wanted to talk about, along with listening to people who are quieter, is that relationships are king in improv. If you have a relationship with somebody, they're much more likely to contribute. They're much more likely to feel fulfilled in that relationship. I mean, like work, we spend a tremendous amount of our time at work, 40 hours or whatever a week. That's a lot of time. And if you don't have those relationships, it's going to make work feel like a drag. And you're going to wonder why you're there. And your retention rate is going to be really bad. On improv, relationships are important because you could have two people doing a scene and maybe they're talking about baseball or something. But if you don't know who they are to each other, it just falls flat because you can only talk about baseball for so long and keep it interesting. But if you're talking
the relationship, and you brought up earlier the pick one, and I said husband and wife, you're talking like that kind of relationship. Or now, pick your relationship.
Yeah. Isn't it much more interesting? If you've got two strangers talking about baseball, not so interesting. But if you've got a husband and wife talking about baseball, now maybe one of them is angry at the other and they're upset that they're at this game when maybe the other person didn't want to, like maybe they didn't want to come. Or maybe like the wife is way better at baseball than the husband, and that creates some tension there, or maybe they're just like a hilarious duo that they, one's a great pitcher, one's a great hitter. It's so much more interesting when you have that relationship in the scene. Whereas you take a scene that was just about baseball before and you add in that context of a relationship. It's so much better. It's so much better. And the same is true again in your workplace. If you're ignoring those relationships with your coworkers, it's going to be dull and your people are going to hate working for you. And sometimes, right? I mean, we've all been there. Sometimes it can be as simple as like taking somebody out to lunch, or, bringing somebody bringing a dessert, sharing something. I find, in new environments, like at a conference or something, I like to carry a little notebook around, and then I'll write down not just the name of the person, but also some little tidbit about their family, about their life, their hobbies, something like that. Because everybody has something that is fascinating about them. Everybody's got some like dopey little interest. I am fascinated with Napoleon Bonaparte. I don't think he was a great guy. But I could read book after book about the guy. I don't know why, but I could also talk about him all the time. And that's one of those things. So like, if you knew me, you might bring that up. Hey, Chris, have you read any interesting books about Napoleon or whatever? And that builds community. It builds a relationship because it means like, not only are you talking, but I'm listening.
Well, you show caring. You show that you actually care about someone's interest. And super side note, if you want to really connect with something, find what their thing that they can talk all day about and they love and they're passionate about, and just ask them a couple of questions. They'll say you had a great talk, you connected this huge bonding relationship, you found their thing that they like, you ask them 2 or 3 questions, and you just let them run with it and listen, and they feel like they got to unleash, unwind, unveil this whole secret part about themselves. And really connect with you, whether you really contributed to the conversation or not, you allowed that to happen. And you allowing that to happen not only strengthens the bond, but they're more likely to then engage you with the thing you're passionate about if you let them go first.
It's true. And they feel listened to and wanted. And we're talking 1 to 2 minutes a day. we're not talking about a huge commitment. This is something that can be easy and fast, but we'll build a lot of commitment to your organization, and maybe loyalty. And you'll see maybe even people working harder because they know that you are interested in them, not just what they can give you.
They don't care about how much you know till they know about how much you care.
Wow, isn't that nice? How many T-shirts is that on?
Well, it's about to be on the one for this episode at least, with my name on it.
Okay, well, yeah. Do I get to plug my show or no? Does that count as a plug?
I think you brought it up, so I don't know if it's a
plug.
I did.
Or not. Okay. Yeah.
All right, whatever. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. So we've got another improv game. I want to just throw you into the mess here. This is a game. I love this game. It's called Where Have My Fingers Been? Sounds a little naughty. It's not. But we're going to work on incorporating all those things we've already talked about. Yes, and relationships, and being able to bring a brick. This is
great because I feel like I'm in my own little improv comedy
training class.
Yeah, pre-training class. The pre-meeting to the meeting to the real meeting.
Yeah.
To then have a meeting for the follow-up meeting. But yeah, definitely the pre-improv comedy training class. I love this.
Yeah. And this is a game you can play, just like at a company picnic or whatever, just to have some fun. Where have my fingers been? It starts with a little song. It goes, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been? And we're going to do a 3-line scene. It's just 3 lines long. Anybody can do this. It's just one finger talking to the other finger. And so you're going to try to establish a relationship between you, what's going on, and then sort of build on that idea. That's what we're looking for. Who are we? Who are these fingers to each other? What are they bringing? What is sort of I don't want to say conflict, but what is the story of this story? What is going on? And maybe raise that tension just a little bit. Just in 3 lines.
So we got where have my fingers been? Where have my fingers been?
Where have my fingers been? Yeah.
I said, where have my fingers been? Yeah. And you talk about 3 things: a relationship.
You're going to try to build those into the scene. Yeah. It's basically just the relationships between the two of them. Again, that could be doctor-patient, mother-daughter, husband-wife, whatever you want. Who are they to each other? The relationship. Mm-hmm. And then you want some kind of forward movement. It could be some would say in a storytelling context, the conflict. It doesn't have to be between the two of them, but it could be their shared goal. It could be what they want, something. And then you want to raise the stakes on that just a little bit. So we've got a basic problem, and then we're going to raise the stakes a little bit in 3 lines. So it's not too bad. Anybody can do it. And here's the other thing we haven't talked a lot about. Yes, you have to be silly, but you have to be willing to fail. Okay? You have to be open to the idea that failure is okay, it builds character, and if you're too afraid to fail, you'll never try anything, and you're never going to get anywhere. So you got to be open to failure. And so
if you do something wrong, you got to do it twice.
Yeah. That's another thing it's a rule in comedy is if you mess up, if you stumble, do it a second time. If you fail, do it twice. Because if say you're on stage and you trip and it's an accident, do it again and it becomes a characteristic of your character, right? Who's on stage. You suddenly become a part of the joke. We were talking before the interview about the military and how easy it is for people to pick on you in the military. If you break wind in public.
This is a family show, Chris.
Is it? I think we're all aware that families fart. But you have 2 options. People probably heard you do it. You have 2 options. You can either be embarrassed and let people make fun of you, or you can be a part of the joke, right? You can own that. And you can own that by farting again. As just in comedy in a scene, if you mess up, you can do it twice. And it goes from being a mistake to something that you meant to do, or something that you can be a part of the joke on. Rather than being the butt of a joke, you're part of the joke. So be okay with failure. It's totally fine. So we have our little song. It's going to go, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been? And then you can just give me a location.
Are we talking plain language like Buenos Aires, or you wanted me to sing the response?
No, I'm sorry. You can just give me a location, any location.
Okay. Or you want me to say it right now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Please give me a location.
Petra, Jordan.
Petra, Jordan. Oh, Dave, I'm so glad we came here on our honeymoon. Oh, this is where Indiana Jones was. Sarah, I wanted to tell you that while we're in Petra, I got chased by a rolling boulder. You got chased by a boulder just like Indiana Jones? Oh, my hero. And that's where my fingers been. I said, where have my fingers been? I said, where have my fingers been?
So you're using this as like, so the people obviously aren't seeing the video. You're using your fingers to talk like puppets.
Yes, like puppets.
That's puppets. What I was missing.
So one finger is one person, one finger is another. And then you move
back
forward,
to G-rated show, folks.
Yeah, back to G-rated show. So you just try to create a little scene with your fingers talking to each other, and they're different characters.
Yeah, I got it now, and it makes sense. You're setting. I like it. Very interesting. Cool.
You're building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying yes and to ideas. You're taking a small idea and building on it. And failure was a real option, but you faced that failure and you had courage and you went after it. And that is awesome. And that's something you can do. Even that silly little basic game, you can do it around a big circle of people, each having a 3-line scene. Oh, what's that?
Hashtag was not edited.
We did it, and the first time. Yeah, there was no second take on that one.
No second take.
That being able to feel like you're in a safe environment, where people are not going to hate you for having thrown out your idea. They're not going to hate you if you fail. That is so important to creativity. And in your organizations, in your nonprofits, having an environment where people can be free to throw out good ideas is so valuable. Because they have a relationship with you already by this point. They can now feel free to toss out ideas, which may revolutionize the way you run your organization. Those little ideas that those quiet people give you. If they are not afraid to fail, you're going to get some great stuff out of everybody.
And what this might look like and what you might have seen in the past when we talk about throwing ideas to build something up, if you're talking something like a product development, and I know there's maybe not a lot of product developers out here, but something like the iPod. At the time, music was tape CDs or on the radio. There wasn't really quote unquote internet music. There kind of was internet music. But when you're building a product like this, there's ideas that are going to come into it, and you're going to build this thing. And this thing is not the thing you're moving forward with. And when you get to kind of, all right, we're stopping with the new ideas, you're going to look at what you have, and you're going to strip away the excess to get down to this kind of core idea of what it really is. And the iPod itself, very popular, revolutionized the way we did music. The tagline was 1,000 songs in your pocket. Mm-hmm. Clean, easy. The usability is easy. It's a little dial. And no, I'm not getting paid by Microsoft or anything like that. But the functionality yet simplicity of it, when they broke down all the kind of the fluff to get down to the core stuff, is what helped make it just a wonderful product. Mm-hmm. So when you have these ideas for whatever kind of event, whatever kind of connection with donors, whatever it is that you're looking at to do in your business, your nonprofit, whatever you're doing it, you're going to have these ideas kind of thrown together like molding clay. You're just glopping it on each other, but eventually you're going to carve that thing down. You're going to fine tune it to reveal the beauty of the product, the service, the whatever, and get down to its core components. So this isn't a linear process. This is throwing ingredients into a mixing bowl that all looked very different at the start, mixing it, making some kind of solution, putting it under that heat, that stress test in the oven, and then coming out with a cake, and you're going to have something, a great base, but you might add a little frosting and a little flair to make it really palatable. So the building the service thing, building the product thing is going to involve this process where you're taking stuff, you're throwing it together, you're mixing it up, putting it under that heat stress test, having something that's palatable, but maybe adding a little flair to it. And that's what the process might look like as you're building some of your ideas, programs, products, or services. It's not going to be clean, easy, straightforward. And maybe you have, a flour fight in between, unless you're gluten-free, then, I don't know, rice cauliflower fight or something. I don't know how that works. But those things, the process isn't clean. But if you create the space and the environment, and you allow the things Chris has been talking about, the yes and the not being afraid to fail and not getting smashed for you're having your ideas, but actually bringing a brick to the show to help build something together, you can create these things that we're talking about.
Whatever those things are for your organization. And that takes trust between people. You need to be able to build trust amongst your coworkers, that they can have a safe space. Like, what's something that destroys trust? Have you ever had somebody just like smash your trust?
There's gossiping. Like for me in an organization, gossiping. If you've ever worked with me directly, you'll know this. I don't tolerate it. I think it is something. If you have a thing that bothers you, the person you have to vent about, perfectly fine, understandable. Vent about it to your significant other, a designated person that you have. But if you're in the smoke pit, water cooler, lunch area, and you're talking about venting to that person, or, hey, I heard a thing about someone you work with, I will get rid of you so fast if you don't adjust your thing. Gossiping is, as you can visibly tell, super, super bothers me.
In an improv group, you were just like a band, like a traveling band together. And gossip will destroy your relationships together. Other things that would destroy it would be like anger. If somebody's just carrying anger around all the time, that destroys trust. Violence destroys trust. In improv, I've had people slap me before on stage. Like, we're just like two people on stage and they just haul off and slap me. I can't trust that person anymore because now I know that they don't have my back. And that kind of thing just is terrible in an organization. It makes you feel bad. But now we'll turn around to something positive. What is something that builds trust? In improv, we always clap for each other, like I was mentioning at the end of a scene. Even if it wasn't a great scene, you try to let people know it's okay. It's okay to fail. It's much worse to never try. So you can applaud failures. If somebody never tries anything, they're not going to be any good for your organization. But if they're okay to try something and fail, that's way better than not trying anything at all.
One of the things that I really like and I really try to do, even in the military, I'm not always successful at, but I try to be intentional with giving some kind of feedback. And especially if it's a new thing, I try to give only positive feedback. We had some training at work today, real time. It was the first time we implemented kind of a training program for a group of people that didn't really have an ongoing training. We had an initial training program, but not an ongoing training program for the thing. And it was just the first, 1.0 iteration of one of the topics. And we went through and we did it. And I had another meeting immediately after, but I made sure to go back and said, hey, the training we did earlier, and we already have a relationship. I really like the format. We got to, we walked through some of the process. We covered some of the big topics. We did kind of a little exercise. And then we kind of walked through the exercise together, and you facilitated very well, and you were very positive, and you highlighted key points. And I really appreciate the training this morning. Now, first off, all of those things are true.
Right.
I definitely feel that way. Was there maybe some tweaks or criticism that I might have had if I really wanted to do it? Yeah, of course there would be. But those little things, the little tweaks I might have offered, A, can't be the only thing you tell them. B, the first time you provide some kind of feedback like that shouldn't be the first thing that you tell them. And if you give that kind of break, you give them the little boost up in the beginning, that allows that kind of free flow of communication, that allows that trust to build, that lets them know that we don't give each other enough attaboys, especially in the military.
Yeah.
If they tell you nothing after a brief, that means they liked everything. If they talk to you after the brief, that's because they had a problem with A, B, C, D, sometimes E, F, your breath, and your uniform. Like you really don't give positive reinforcement for a correct answer in the military. It's assumed you're correct unless you get a tweak, which is not very good for the self-esteem ego if you have, those kind of questions about yourself. They're not helpful for that. But be timely, be relevant, and be positive about the things you did like, and don't lie about it. Is very valuable and a great way to build trust and move the relationship forward, move the scene forward, build on the foundation all those things that make sense to you, whatever you are in the world.
Well, there are two things that have really helped me as an improviser, because we're, like I said, we're a traveling band, like, any other, like a music band would be. And bands they have fights, bands break up all the time, and if you want your group to stay together, especially an improv group, there are some things that you really have to be okay with. One, like what you were talking about, not just being able to give critiques, but you have to be able to accept critiques, because that makes you better. And that is really, really hard to be able to take critique and to take it well. Even if somebody's like very delicate and does it the right way, it takes a certain amount of humility to be like, you know what? I'm going to take what they said and I'm going to think about it, in a quiet place.
Absolutely. You have to have that. We switched from always having to be right or never allowing to ask a question. Right. In recent years, to be almost kind of a scientific mindset. I have a hypothesis about the thing. Yeah. Right. And I recognize that's informed hypothesis, but there might not be information that's been discovered or information that I yet have that with the open discussion kind of talk, and I get your opinion. Like, that might enhance my hypothesis, redirect my hypothesis, or realize that, I'm barking up the wrong tree. Fun side note, this would be a helpful frame of mind to discuss politics, religion, sex, and money, and family problems, just as a little side note. But you have to have that thing that says, when you go in, I don't have all the answers. When I set up this podcast, yes, you'll get a plug in a second. When I set up my group, my first video is, in my little group, the first video I did, the first words in my mouth was like, look, I'm doing this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. I know that I want to connect these two things, this business and the nonprofit world. But fun fact, I don't know how to run this kind of group. I don't know how to do a podcast. I'm not sure how this material, this content, this stuff is going to look. And I'm letting you know up front that I do have this experience, and I do have these things, and I do speak with confidence in this sweet, sultry, late night FM DJ radio voice most of the time. But please know that I don't have it all figured out. I don't expect to, and I don't expect you to. If we have interactions, if there's reschedulings, if there's things that come up, it's my job as the moderator, facilitator, admin to try to give grace, because things are going to happen. I've had to reschedule with a couple of guests, sometimes 2-3 times. Sure. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes they happen in clusters. And if we can offer that grace up front, and we can admit that we don't know everything, and sometimes we need to be the receivers of grace as well as the givers of grace. Right. Then we get a little bit further in the conversation. And I know that, surprisingly, in this interview, I've been taking a lot of the airtime, which I don't normally do.
It's fine, man. Go for it. It's your show.
Yeah, it's my show. I'll do what I want.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best things, like, if you want somebody to be able to take critique well, is to model it to them and take a critique well yourself. If you can model that, that helps a lot. Our group leader, Brian, by the way, I didn't get my plug. It's trucepodcast.com. That's TRUCE podcast.
Well, you didn't even plug your comedy troupe. Oh, that's right. You haven't even given us the name of that yet.
Well, unless you're in Jackson, Wyoming, but it's the Laugh Staff, LAFF, Laugh Staff.
But if people come in through Jackson, it's a skiing place, right?
Yeah,
in Wyoming?
Come see us. Yeah,
so people go in,
tourism
and how would they be able to find you if they were coming in for a weekend or something? How would they find your
through
stuff?
Our Facebook group. Yeah, through our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/thelaughstaff, LAFF. Or at the Center for the Arts where we perform. You could buy your tickets in advance if you like. Thank you. And we can also do corporate trainings if you bring your company here. You can contact us through Facebook.
Oh, that's fantastic, because I imagine corporations have retreat events in Jackson.
They really do. Yeah, we have a lot of corporate events. So please, come on by. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot more games we can play with you.
A side question real quick.
Yeah.
There's travel agents that coordinate destinations, and they get paid from the local hotels and conference arenas in Jackson to make those connections. So do you have the travel agents' info, and are they plugging you as they're bringing people in?
No, we have talked to a number of the hotels here. So when they're getting their packages, they can get,
for corporate events.
In. Yeah. So we talk to concierges from time to time because the concierge holds all the power.
I don't think I've ever talked to a concierge when coordinating anything ever. And that probably means I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, they're great on vacation. If you're ever on vacation, ask a concierge for suggestions. But we're getting off the topic.
We've been so off topic most of this thing, but I think
it's great.
We're definitely providing value.
Yeah. I think the last thing I wanted to throw out there is that now that you talked about building relationships and saying yes, and one of the most important things in improv is be quick to forgive yourself. So if you get up in the first scene and you strike out, and it just flops, you can't carry that failure with you for the next 2 hours because it will destroy your whole show.
And this is excellent advice if you play poker, but
yes, of course. Yes.
You gotta be able to forget that hand you just sucked at and get the next deal's coming, whether you're ready for it or not.
Right. And this goes for forgiving others, your coworkers, the other people in your team. It also goes for forgiving yourself. You have to be able to learn from your mistakes, absolutely, but be able to forgive yourself very quickly. Because if you don't, you'll drag those failures with you, maybe for the rest of your life. And that doesn't get you anywhere. As it can ruin an improv scene, it can ruin your corporation or your organization. Mm-hmm. You want people to be able to be forgiven for what they've done and show them grace. That if nothing else, if you walk away with nothing else, be able to forgive other people and forgive yourself, because otherwise nothing will create a hostile environment faster than unforgiveness.
I tell you what, Chris, I wasn't sure how this episode would play out, where we would go, that we would be getting improv comedy lessons. We covered a multitude of topics. So amazing. We've got plugs along the way for your Truce podcast, which is fantastic. We've got the Laugh Staff, yeah. AFF on both of those Laugh Staff.
Yes,
in Jackson, Wyoming. You even plugged a movie in there.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, if you do nothing else, see if you can wrangle Chris onto a phone call just to talk to this man.
We have a lot of fun.
Whatever the thing is, Chris is worth your time.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I've been blessed. I think one of the other things we talked about in our pre-interview was saying yes to life. This yes and thing that we talked about in improv is so important just in your life. If you can say yes to, and I've been really blessed in that I've worked in the entertainment industry. I worked on Hell's Kitchen, the Bernie Mac show. I worked for the Cleveland Indians baseball team in the scoreboard department. I've been able to drive a school bus. I've got a podcast. I wrote and directed 2 films. So a lot of that was just, I think both of us have been to all 50 states in the U.S.
50 states.
And
hashtag all 50.
All 50. A lot of that is, and the District of Columbia. But a lot of that is just saying yes to life. And when it gives you that opportunity, it can make a huge difference. You don't want to miss out on something because you're so afraid to try something new. And you are an improviser now because you said, yes, and I will try this.
Yes, and we did pre-recorded training, but currently nothing's edited out because, let's be honest, we crushed it. But I wanted to point out so our pre-conversation, you said a lot of life is saying yes. And one of the things, it's kind of one of my personal mantras or principles, is that nothing matters unless you show up.
Right.
And those are both hand in hand, and those are both fantastic. And if you don't say yes and show up, look, the good things aren't happening. Yeah. No one is going to come to your house, knock on your door and say, hey, person I don't know or never met, I have a legitimate opportunity, not a scam, but a legitimate opportunity for the thing that's going to enrich and enhance your life, your perspective, your pocketbook, your wellness, your well-being, your health. It's not going to happen. They're not coming to you. You might get an ad via, Facebook stream or Hulu ad or whatever your thing is, but no one's coming to you in the place that you're hiding at, or the wallflower, or in your dark room, or the I don't want to talk. No one's coming to you. Right. You have to say yes to the opportunity, and then you've said yes. Then you got to actually show up. Truth be told, 2 minutes before we started talking today.
Yeah.
I was over here after a long day of work and a busy time in my day job, over in the Middle East here. Was not interested in talking to you. Not you as a person.
I understand you were tired.
But not interested in engaging. And I could have easily said, you know what, Chris, we got to reschedule because I'm being a little baby right now.
Right.
I could have easily done that.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been one step closer to doing less every day instead of one step closer to saying yes every day and engaging every day and living every day and growing every day and connecting every day and providing value every day and being awesome every day. Hashtag how I met your mother. You have to say yes. You have to show up, whether it's for an online interview or an in-person interview, whether it's getting up, showering, shaving, getting ready for the day, or for the gals, putting the old war paint on and going out ready to kick some butt. If you don't do that, no one's going to do it for you. No one cares more about your success, your trajectory, your life than you do. Chris, love having you on so very much. I look forward to any and all future conversations. 2 Ps and an international pod. Drop me some quotes, contact, email, Facebook, whatever the gram people can reach you at real quick and where you want them. Your primary source of connection, where you want it to be.
Right. Everything is at trucepodcast.com. That's TRUCE podcast.com. I've got Facebook, I've got Instagram, I've got Twitter, and they're all at Truce Podcast. You can also find the Laugh Staff, like I said, on Facebook, LAFF, if you'd like to hire us for a corporate event or a training, or even just have us over to play games with your family on vacation, we do that as well. It's a great way to bring your family together, especially if the extended family is there. And so it's just been a pleasure talking to you, Travis. Thanks for this opportunity.
You've been listening to The Nonprofit Architect. To listen to all our past shows, visit http://nonprofitarchitect.org. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Thank you.